Welcome to Three Thoughts On. Thank you all for being here today. I'm excited to have a friend of mine that was introduced to me by a very good friend. This is Chef Frank or Frank the Plachon. Frank, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, thank you. Where are you right now? Where in the world are you these days?
Right now, I'm a little bit everywhere, but I'm based out of Connecticut, so on the East Coast right now. So that's where my home base is with the kids and the family.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for making the time. We've been trying to get this together for a few weeks now, and I'm so happy that we have the time because
And here,
I want people to hear your story. So before we get started in the conversation, why don't you give us an introduction of who you are and how did you get to do what you're doing today?
yes. Whoa, that's a loaded question. I guess you can tell from my accent, I am not from here. I have not grown up in the United States. I was born in France, born and raised in France, and I am from the world of hospitality. I grew up in the world of hospitality. I'm a former chef. I was a pastry chef, and eventually I became a director of food and beverage. And I have, I would say, my entire career, 25 years of hospitality, was mostly and entirely into the world of luxury, Michelin-star, elite excellence. So that's where I come from. And then in 2020, I built a company called Incrementum, and I went full speed in 2023 with my company. So now I am out of the kitchen a little bit more, and I'm in the world of consulting. I'm in the world still in hospitality, but I'm in the world of entrepreneur, which is a journey that I've really enjoyed very much.
Well, that's quite the journey, and actually, it seems like the something happened that made you make that shift, or was that something that you had in mind all along?
So that's a very good question. I'm not asked that question often. I built my company in 2020 during the COVID years, during the pandemic. The whole world obviously was on standby. The world of hospitality was completely imploded, I would say. And if you get to know me, you understand I'm not someone that knows how to stand still. I still need to find ways of keeping myself busy. And so I've decided to certify myself from a reputable company, the John Maxwell Certification Program, to become a certified coach, speaker, and trainer. I've always been attracted with the world of leadership, thought leadership, quote speeches, inspiration from the greats, and so I just applied a lot of those life stories into my own journey, and find myself being in a position when I was unknowingly becoming one through my mentoring and my coaching of my team. So I've certified this in 2020, built my company 2020, and then I moved back to East Coast. I was in Arizona then when that happened. I moved to East Coast and kind of put my company on the back burner because I was homeowner for the first time, starting a new job for the first time, moving across the country, and also being a father for the first time. My daughter was about 5 weeks old at the time, so there was no room. I had no bandwidth to continue my company. So I've joined Auberge Resort Collection for about 2 years. And then in 2023, unfortunately, which ended up becoming a fortunately, they eliminated my position from restructuration within the company, which happens often. And I guess my biggest career downfall at the time became my biggest blessing. And I opened the door of entrepreneurship, and I've been really, really enjoying it ever since.
That's wonderful, and that's correct me if I'm wrong, but that was around the time that you ended up here in Lake Nona through Susie, right? Our common friend Susie.
Yes, yes. So Susie, the property I was working at in Arizona, Susie was the asset manager of that property. I've met her back then. And then she obviously took the job in Lake Nona, became the general manager of the Wave Hotel. And then shortly after, I think I started full-time entrepreneur in February 2023. And she called me in April to say, Frank, I need some help here. Can you come? And a 30-day assignment ended up becoming a 3.5 months assignment to help her kind of repositioning and helping kind of stabilizing things at the property. And eventually finding a replacement that I've passed over. So I was just kind of the temporary guy, the guy in between, that was helping keeping continuity into what the Wave Hotel has now become.
I want to get back to that later in the conversation because it was such a wonderful time, when she was here, and the work that you came in to help her. But before we get into that, let's go back to the young version of yourself, because when you look at what you're doing right now, and when you look at what you were doing before, being someone who loves the culinary art, right, and being in the kitchen creating, those seem to have different points of inspiration,
They
right?
are.
And so
Definitely are, yeah.
talk to us about young Frank, right? What drove you to the kitchen versus something else?
Yes, it started very, very young. I think I would say, as long as I remember, my curiosity towards cooking happened probably anywhere between 8 and 12. Very, very young. I'm very lucky. I mean, coming from France, hospitality, we live and breathe hospitality. We just know it. But I'm very lucky. I have both parents that knew how to cook. My mom was the comfort food, and she was making family meals. They were never about impressing anyone. They were always about making sure that we're all around the table and we're enjoying a good meal. When my dad, who did not cook as often due to these, he was a military, so he was not home always. Then when he was home, he was usually putting the apron on during the holidays, grabbing recipes, trying something he's never done before. But he was more taking the artistic approach to culinary, when my mom was more of the taste and the comfort and the what her mom taught her when she was younger. So I really got to be inspired by both, and realized that culinary is something that was just I see, wow, you can actually do all of this. It's almost like there's a level of creativity that comes with cooking, that you rarely get in a lot of the jobs out there. So I started that. I actually was in middle school, and I've made the very sound decision at my age to skip high school. So I've never went to high school. Middle school, I went on apprenticeship, and I did about 4 years of apprenticeship, got my degree. That's where I started the world of Michelin-starred rated restaurant back in France, and I did that for about 10 years. Yeah, so that's
Wow,
that's
wow,
the
and
journey.
you said that you were focused initially as a pastry chef.
I did pastry, so it's funny because back in the early 2000 and now, the issue of finding good talent was always the same and still the same to this day. But I was into properties when I was being given the chance to cook, and sometimes there was a call out, so I was in pastry. I found passion in both, so I ended up probably taking a little bit more of my time to get to the top of the ladder of the kitchen, because I actually spend enough time into the pastry world learning pastries and bakery and how to make danishes, and at the same time cooking. I do believe that not everyone, usually you're going to find a chef that doesn't know nothing about pastry beside eating them. I got fortunate to be trained on both. I enjoyed both. I enjoyed the precision of the pastry world, with the grammage you have to get for your recipes, and then in the kitchen you are a little bit more going with your taste, and you're going with the flow, and then you just kind of try things. Um, and um, and I think being a pastry chef made me a better chef all around, and being a chef made me a better pastry chef, because I knew the world of herbs and spices, and I started to incorporate that in the world of pastry, which traditional pastry chef were looking at me in a very weird way. I say, what do you mean you're using herbs, marjoram, or using parsley into pastry? And I just kind of combined them both. That became kind of my print, my footprint, I would say. And like I said, that just became so. I successfully did both career equally, and led some property as an executive pastry chef as well as executive chef.
So let me throw something at you and see what your thoughts on this are, right? Because I'm a decent cook, but there's obviously a huge difference between cooking for yourself and cooking for other people, especially at the level that you have, right? And luxury properties and things like that. But there was an interview that was done years ago. I saw this somewhere online with Wolfgang Puck, who
Mhm.
everyone knows who he is, and he was talking about the difference between him when he first started as a young chef, and then him later on in life as a experienced chef. And one of the things that he said was that in the beginning, he was very adamant when it came to steaks, that steaks needed to be served a very particular way, and that if which was in his world was medium rare, right?
Mhm.
Um, and if a client came in and asked for something well done, he would just walk out of the kitchen and just say, "No, I'm not gonna give you a steak well done because that's like eating a boot. You don't know what you're doing," and then he just wouldn't serve them, right? And then later in life, as he got older, he's like, people have to they like what they like. If a person gives me a request for a well done steak, I'm gonna give him the best well done steak I can make him. Even though I don't agree with it. How do you see with that? I mean, do you agree, or do you have a different
I,
way?
No, I tend to agree with the older Wolfgang Puck, when you work in the world of Michelin star, you tend to, it's like this is where you learn that there's no salt and pepper on the table. You won't find it. You're just cooking the way the chef wants it. You don't request salt and pepper because it's an offense to the chef because it's meant to be served that way. So I started there, but as I grew up in the world of luxury, and especially in hotels and resort, when a guest coming to your property, staying in an hotel, it's not like they're coming to a restaurant. Coming in an hotel, they've already paid for their stay. Uh, Unless you're a destination restaurant, you're kind of an amenity. You're the cafeteria. Therefore, you don't really have the ability nor the odyssey to just say, "I'm sorry, but not going to happen today." Because at the end of the day, they're still sleeping at the hotel and they're still a guest of the hotel. So we're learning in the world of luxury in hotels and resort to be flexible as in nature, like naturally, just being flexible. But I did work for chef that as I don't know. I used to be somewhat of the same, a little bit in some different ways, but there's an ego. There's a lot of pride when you're a chef, and this is just sometimes when you refuse to give what the guests want, is it really what you don't want to get, or is it just your ego gets in the way? And oftentimes, as I learn and become myself an adult, I realized that I was a very egotistical chef back then in so many aspects. It's just my way or the highway, and that's just the way it is. And so I've learned to be a lot more flexible. I've learned to understand. And to your point, as Wolfgang Goek was sharing, I'm going to give you the best well done steak I can ever give you. And if it can be tender because I marinated it before, and you have it's the same feedback if you have someone asking for medium rare saying it was the best steak I ever had in my last 10 years, and someone giving him a tender, well done steak and give you the same feedback. That feedback has the exact same value.
That is wonderful to hear because I do love the flexibility, and I've seen what you just described as far chefs that won't work with you, and then I've seen chefs who work with you, and then the experience just gets so much better all around. So what would you say to a young man or a young woman that is looking into the world of the chef world? Because it seems like now with the whole thing of reality TV, and all the stuff that you see on TV with Hell's Kitchen, this and that, is it like that, or is that just dramatization for TV?
Yeah, it is definitely a dramatization from TV. There is some level of reality, but um, how can I go by that? I think the lack of education in the world of culinary for someone's going to just decide to watch Food Network 5 hours a day and suddenly think they Gordon Ramsay in their own kitchen at their house. It's just it's a misconception of what the real world is. I think right now, I think the biggest thing that I would say for a young person, that's a student of hospitality or someone to explore, is something that has been lost. I think as we're living in 2025, is patience. Patience is a lost virtue, in my opinion. It's okay and totally acceptable to be ambitious. That doesn't mean you have to burn the step of patience. It takes a lot of years. Michael Mina, Wolfgang Puck, Jean-Georges Van Gerichten, Daniel Boulou, they were not these guys as we know them in the first years of their life. They just were not. It took them many years of mastering their craft and making the right decision and working for the right people in order to be where they are. So it is important to know that it is a very long journey. We're living in a generation, and I'm a millennial myself, but we're living with a generation right now that are very influenced by what they see on their phone, influenced by what they see on TV, and they're being thrown images of what success look like. And so even though they're not necessarily understanding what their own success is, they have not yet to really get deep into themselves, finding out what is success through life. Is it making money my success? Is it having a title my success? Is it just being married and having kids my success? And so people just don't know yet, but they're being thrown images of what success should look like. Therefore, this is where they're headed, not knowing that there's a lot of work that takes place prior to that. And I think that's very unfortunate that that's the route it's taking. But I guess my generation as millennial, we have created this. We have allowed this to take place. Therefore, there's a level of accountability that we have to take as a generation prior to the new generation.
I'm so glad that you said that because, yes, I think that level of instant gratification, right, that this new world has taught the younger generation. I'm a little bit older because I was born in 1971, so it was a world before internet, before any of this stuff. And you know that it's like going to the gym. If you want to have a particular body, you have to work at it a certain way for a period of time before it looks and feels the way that you want. And I'm so glad that you brought that because that's a good transition to the next chapter in your life, because people don't see the work that has been put in. They see the success, right? Bryan Cranston, who's an actor. He was, Breaking Bad, right? He has a wonderful interview that I think has been all over the web now, where he talks about this, where he says people come to him, young people that want to go to Hollywood, which is also an art, right? Acting and singing and all that stuff, and they want to give it three years, and if it doesn't work out, then they're out. And he's like, I gave it 25. Like, he started in his late teens. And Malcolm in the Middle was his first break. And he was already a grown man. And now he's an A-list. He's a magnificent actor. I'm a big fan of his. But it's like, no. You have to keep going. If this is what you love, if this is what you want, you have to keep going, and you have to keep adapting, and you have to keep adjusting, and you have to keep reevaluating, making changes, making adjustments, course correction, until you get to where you think you want to be. And at that point, guess what? There's more evaluation and then see what's happening next. So it seems like that's exactly what happened with you, right? Because you went from a lifetime of being inspired by your parents and the food and the technique and the precision of baking versus the creativity of the rest of the kitchen. And then one day it's like, you know what? COVID hits, and now you gotta do something else, right? So tell us about that moment and as you transitioned away.
Yeah, of course. And before, if I were to take on what you just said, I think there's a part that is very, very important and oftentimes either dismissed or ignored is you've got to fall in love with the process. All those years that you put in, they're going to be hard because we're living in a world when we are checking boxes once we've reached a result. It's like I have a goal, let me reach that goal and then move on. And we right now, because of the instant gratification world and the world of impatience, our goals are like very temporary. They're just like short and temporary. It's like, let me get this before the end of the month, and boom, I feel great about it. I've got this boost of energy because I feel great. When I live from a world when it doesn't matter when I arrive. I'm enjoying going through that journey. I'm fulfilled going through that journey. And then if there's results, I'm okay with just the result being just the way it is. And if it doesn't pan out, of course you have to have objective, and of course you have something that you keep on chasing. I completely understand that, but there shouldn't be so much emphasis into the destination. Shouldn't be. It should be something that destination will happen. I'm a great picture of that. I had goals, I had objective, but at the end of the day, I'm loving so much the process and the journey of what I'm doing that I it doesn't matter if I arrive this year or I arrive in 2 years, as long as I arrive, if there's such a thing.
Yeah, no,
So
I fully agree with you. And I think, people take it as a cliche. It's like, oh, it's about the journey, not the destination. And people play that down. But it is very true. And it's not just. It's not just a mindset. It's actually part of our biology. The way that we're built. We are built to crave for things we don't have,
mhm,
right? So what happens when you get them? Then you crave something else you don't have, right? So if you focus on the destination, you'll find pretty quickly that once you get there, then it's like, well, now what? Now what you loved, and if you worked for the destination instead of working for the process and the journey, you'll get disillusioned with the destination, because once you're there, you're now thinking about something else, right?
absolutely.
So I fully agree with you on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to embrace that part. It's you don't have to get to the top by the time you're 25. Just you don't have to. Especially by the time if you're to the top by the time you're 25, you probably have skipped a lot of steps, which will catch up with you later on in life in whatever way you think it is. So yeah, definitely.
Indeed. So now COVID hits, and you decide to take this leadership course. That from
Mhm.
from from Maxwell, which I'm familiar with. Very good content. Why was that the the focus at that moment? I mean, yes, we were going through a tough time globally, but you could have done 15 other things. Like
That's
what
true.
drove you to that? You could have done things that were directly related with what you were doing before, right? What led you to that
I
decision?
think it's there was two realization. One was when once the hospitality world during pandemic starting to slow down, in a way general in the world was slowing down. I've got to take a step back and having conversation. Like you work in hospitality, you come to work, you do your work, you're working busy, the guest is coming. Like you just never really take the real time to building rapport and relationship to a very deep and meaningful aspect. So I started to talk to my peers, to the people reporting to me, the chefs that followed me from hotels to hotels, and I came to a realization that I've always have been for them more than just a chef. I was always someone guiding them throughout their life, and I never realized that role. So that's one of the aspects. The second is I was uh, I was just newly married with my wife, and we were obviously thinking of building a family and founding a family. And so when I started talking to again some of my colleagues, my peers that had kids, and every time I was asking, how do you balance this world of hospitality, chef, family, and all this? And there is the stigma of society when it's hard to find family while you're working in the hospitality, working the holidays, the weekends. You called in all the time, the countless amount of hours. So I knew what I was getting into, but I was asking from real life experience from people that I trust their opinion. And they were just saying, I wish I had more time with my kids. I just wish I had more time with my kids. And so at that time, I didn't have kids, but we were in the conversation with my wife. And so I just say, how can I do things differently? I'm someone that always going to introspect and finding out, okay, if that's the information I have in front of me, how can I navigate to be the best of being a chef still, but at the same time being present for my family? And so as I was going through it, I say, you know what? There's going to be a time when I might run out of passion for the hospitality. It's a possibility. And so when I built my company and I started to do this, was there's going to be everyone loves an expert. Everyone loves to know an expert. And I just figure, I say, you know what? Maybe I just need to, in the years from now, maybe in 15, 20, 30 years from now, I would love for people to be in a place when I have something to say and it could help the next generation. And so I said, there's nothing better than certifying yourself into this program. So now you have a voice, you have a way, you are comfortable speaking in front of a public. You have a way of talking based on the messaging that you want to transpire. And so all this made me want to do that. And I said, I'm going to work in hospitalities for as long as I can. And then once I'm not, falling back into the Maxwell certification was kind of my fallback on that I was already placing in my 30s because I had the time and I was being given the time. The world was giving me the time. So I decided to put that with, again, no timeline, no objective on when it's going to happen. I just know that it would happen when it would happen. And losing my job in 2023 did speed up this entire process because I was never even thinking in a minute to jump into the entrepreneur world. I just was, the growth I think happen when you are not expecting it. It's in front of you, and you just have to take a leap of faith, or you have to just take a chance, take a risk, and just do that. So that's kind of the two thoughts that made me kind of headed in that direction. There was one that was immediate from the feedback I was receiving, and the other one was more into establishing myself into the future to create a better harmony or balance into the human being that I wanted to be.